rise above party politics and care about the needs and the interests of the people of South Africa. I so move, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Van Rooyen.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Allow me, Speaker, just to share two of many MK party...
Order, Honourable Members, can we allow the member on the platform to be heard?
Allow me to share two of many MK party takeaway lessons from this legally flawed fiscal framework and revenue proposal process. Number one, the process exposed National Treasury as a ministry that doesn't consider or take country public participation democracy serious. National Treasury was advised by both the FFC and the Parliament Budget Office not to increase VAT, as this will worsen the hard living conditions enjoyed by the poor masses of our people. This advice was ignored. This advice was further reiterated by MPs serving in the Finance Committee, except ANC MPs, who were obviously instructed to swallow the bitter pill, even if it worked against their party position on being a pro-poor party. Interestingly, at the tail end of the process, IFP supported a very weird and legally flawed recommendation on VAT increase initiated by Action SA, which seems to be finding it difficult to resist the devil-packed blue lights temptation. Speaker, as if that was not enough, National Treasury, through a public participation process facilitated by Joint Committee of Finance, received 51 submissions. Only 2 of these submissions supported VAT increases. The rest opposed the regressive revenue generation measure. Still, National Treasury refused to listen. The million-dollar question is, who is National Treasury serving and supposed to listen to? If the overwhelming majority voice of reason is ignored, who is National Treasury listening to? We hope this posture by National Treasury does not confirm our long-held view that South Africa is controlled by powerful men from Washington and London, pulling the strings in far-flung neoliberal colonies. Of course, with the active support of greedy and unpatriotic local politicians, 10 political managers of the moment. As MK Party, we hope that National Treasury posture does not substantiate our long-held view that National Treasury is a proxy of global capital whose sole objective is to enrich the few and subject the masses of the global population to extreme poverty, unemployment, and inequality through neoliberal policies. I must indicate, Minister, you were advised to consider reviewing tax incentives given to businesses without realization of desired outcomes, so as you can save millions for the fiscus. You were further advised to consider suspending government contribution to government employees' pension fund and generate much-needed injection to the fiscus. We advise you to consider wealth tax to tamper with the unacceptable wealth distribution disparity bedeviling our country. All these advices fell on deaf ear. Honourable Speaker, the list of alternative revenue sources is very long. Our country has the potential to finance its development agenda, provided its leaders stop worshipping white capital at the expense of its people. MK Party does not support this report. It is far from addressing the budget requirements and challenges of our beloved country. It is more a compliance exercise which failed to meet the statute provisions. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Burke. Mrs. Pelly. Honorable Becker.
Madam Speaker, it's significant that this report was considered in yesterday's committee on the first day of April. A farcical day for a farcical process leading to a farcical report. Yet, it's a report that sadly is not an April Fool's joke. Madam Speaker, this House generates stacks of reports, agendas and minutes of meetings which fill archives, servers and libraries. Much of it meaningless, expensive, full of nothing documents that change very little for our people, a waste. But every now and then, Parliament has the ability to take regular A4 paper and give it remarkable power, to change lives with laws, to table budgets, and because of the power in the Constitution and the Money Bills Act, gives Parliament the power to amend bad budgets. And yesterday we had the chance and almost the numbers to amend a bad budget. We could have fulfilled our constitutional duty to do so, to protect South Africans, to protect them from a budget that includes VAT increases, that doesn't move the needle enough for an efficient government that creates jobs and grows the economy. And that chance was spectacularly squandered. It was squandered by Action SA, the IFP, and the ANC, who voted on a version of a report which only came into existence hours after the meeting and the voting had concluded. Now, sure, supporters of this April Fool's Day farce are very quick to point out while they accepted the fiscal framework, they're making recommendations to relook at tax increases. Madam Speaker, the archives are full of reports with ignored recommendations. Why don't we ask the Auditor General how delinquent ANC local governments across the country respond to their recommendations year after year? Why don't we ask those who worked on the Zondo Commission what they think the effect of their recommendations has been? After all, the Zondo Commission detailed how the Honourable Joe Moswangani was complicit in state capture. Yet that honourable member is here with us today. He spoke just earlier. And he chaired the farcical, procedurally flawed meeting yesterday. Reports in the hands of ANC-led governments mean nothing. Let me be specific. Action SA took the votes it received from market-friendly and centre-right South Africans and sold them out
Honourable Member,
to support the framework for what?
Order, Honourable Becker. Can you take a seat? Honourable Member, what's the point of order?
No, thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I'm rising on Rule 85. The Honourable Member is casting aspersion on Honourable Moswangani. He says Honourable Moswangani is complicit in terms of the state capture. So if you want to do that, he must bring a substantive motion. Thanks, Speaker.
Honourable Member, I would listen to the Hansard and come back with the ruling. Honourable Makhlakis, what are you rising on now?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when you consider the Hansard, will you also consider that the Honourable Member actually quoted the Zondo report, which was a fact? Thank you.
Honourable Member, I said I will look at the matter and come back to the House with the ruling. Can you proceed, Honourable Becker?
Madam Speaker, I've consulted the Hansard Dictionary on what casting aspersions means.
Honourable Member, can you please proceed with your speech?
None of what I've said was false or misleading. It's all very well documented. And for me to damage your reputation, you need to have one.
Honorable member, on order, honorable member. I have said on the matter, because there was a point of order raised, I will come back to the House. So can you proceed with your speech on the report?
His last staff.
As I was saying, Madam Speaker, what did Action SA sell their voters out for? 5 minutes of media coverage? Promises of future cabinet positions?
Insults.
Certainly not to stop taxes, because those taxes and those increases are still very much baked into the fiscal framework. Action SA has said it's in Parliament to be a constructive opposition. Yet its only significant achievement so far is to support a report enabling an ANC anti-poor, anti-growth and anti-jobs VAT-based budget.
Go home. We hate the ANC way, that's a man.
And so there are only two rational explanations for what they were thinking and what the IFP might have been thinking. Either they were the April Fools
Just paints.
and they genuinely thought they were changing the budget with their flimsy, pointless recommendations, and they didn't come to the committee with even a basic understanding of the Moneyballs Act. Or, alternatively, these parties knew exactly what they were doing and were trying to make South Africans the victims, selling us down the river for an ANC VAT-based budget. And either way, what the IFP and ASA did was treachery. The DA, on the other hand, is very clear about what we're doing, and we've been consistent, both in our intentions yesterday and through the course of the 7th administration. We joined this government to drive efficient spending, grow the economy and create jobs, not to enable the worst parts of the ANC. The ANC will have to turn to Action SA for that.
Kylie is poor.
We've been met with an ANC that's refused to upgrade the economy or to compromise. They don't want coalition partners. They want supplicants. Welcome, ASA.
Goodbye.
I will say one thing.
Order, honorable members.
I will say one thing about all the paper that Parliament generates, Madam Speaker. Even the reports and motions that achieve nothing do record our deeds or misdeeds. And what will they record now? Today, you, honourable members, have the same opportunity Action SA and the AFP had yesterday and squandered either for cheap political points or as victims of the saddest April Fool's joke in parliamentary history. So your choice is as follows. 1, you can choose to vote for a report that keeps the fiscal framework as it is, that enshrines tax increases, enshrines bad economic policy, and supports the anti-poor, anti-growth and anti-jobs ANC budget. Or 2, you can support us in opposing this increase.
Support you.
As the DA, we will remain on course. We'll pursue an efficient government, growth and jobs, and vote firmly against this farce of a report. We reject it with the content it deserves.
We reject you.
It's not worth the paper it was printed on.
Angry about the blue lights, no?
Honorable Maude, yes. Honorable Van Rooyen, what's your point of order? Sorry, Honorable Reddy.
Madam Speaker, I rise in terms of Rule 65. You know, while the previous speaker, it's not every day that we like to hear what the DA has to say, and today we wanted to hear, but members were actually speaking into the mic, switching on their mic, and as a result of that, we were unable to hear the speaker. Now, the sound, the acoustics is extremely bad on this side of the House. I'm really appealing to you, Speaker, to get some control here and inform members that they should not howl so much so that we cannot hear the speakers. Please.
Thank you, Honorable Reddy. That point I made myself for all of you in this House to actually be in order. Honorable Maude, take your podium.
Thank you, Speaker. Greetings, President and Commander-in-Chief, Honorable Julius Malema, officials, commissars, and fighters. The EFF does not support the 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals as tabled by the Minister of Finance. Speaker, we wrote you last night an urgent letter requesting the withdrawal of the report on the 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals adopted by the Standing Committee on Finance yesterday, adopted during a very chaotic meeting and in a procedurally illegal manner. In our letter, we demonstrated that the committee failed to follow a very basic but essential legal requirement in terms of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act of 2009, and requested that you withdraw this item from the order paper, but you chose not to do so. This is what will ultimately collapse the confused GNU government, not the present backroom dealings and backstabbing we are witnessing, but the failure to follow a simple legislative process. With all the confusion we witnessed in the committee yesterday, we are reminded of a giant of our struggle, Mama Winnie Nomzamo Madikizela Mandela, who passed away on this day 7 years ago. She once said, and I quote, "We have betrayed our people. Our struggle has been betrayed. The ANC has become something we never envisaged." And I end quote. This quote rings truer than ever before, as the ANC, now hiding behind the so-called GNU, continues to sell out the aspirations of our people. The less said about Action SA's misunderstanding of the legislation which guides the process and procedure to amend and approve the proposed budget as tabled by the Minister, the better. We will take time outside the sitting and explain, perhaps in a more simpler manner, that the budget is not passed based on negotiations of good faith, but is a creature of statutes. But let's deal with the crux of the matter, the debate, and what has caused so much chaos with this budget. Speaker, allow us to take the educational approach, and then we'll make some of the proposals that should have found expression in amending the report. Firstly, the procedure to process the fiscal framework and revenue proposal tabled by the Finance Minister is guided by the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act. Let me remind you, this is the very same legislation that, when it was introduced in the late 1990s, the ANC and the then Finance Minister Trevor Manuel did not want this law because they wanted all the powers in the hands of a government to pass a budget. But that is not what the Constitution says. Secondly, once the budget is tabled by the Finance Minister as a proposal, it is up to us as members of Parliament who have legislative responsibility to finalize the budget. We cannot send it back to the Finance Minister. It becomes our baby, and we must see it through to the end. Number 3, like we said in our letter to you, Speaker, this report was adopted unprocedural because despite our advice in the committee, the ANC refused to hear the advice and follow simple procedure. They could not allow for this to happen because they wanted to hoodwink Action SA into adopting a report they seem not to understand in its implications. And for that, we don't blame them because they simply didn't know. Lastly, Speaker, all other money bills, this includes the appropriation bill, division of revenue bills, and all other bills, including ultimately VAT, must be consistent with this fiscal framework and revenue proposal. You cannot vote for a VAT increase today and hope that when it comes in the form of a separate bill, it is different. It will be inconsistent with the law and this fiscal framework. President, we are making simple proposals as the EFF. We are saying we reject the Finance Minister's proposal of VAT and we say it must be kept at 14%. We are saying let's adjust the personal income tax bracket in line with inflation so that when middle and low income earners receive annual adjustments on their wages, they are not pushed into higher brackets. We are saying let's increase corporate income tax and introduce new forms of wealth tax that target apartheid inheritance. We made a proposal for an amendment to increase funding for SARS so that they can go and collect 800 billion rands that is there uncollected. We made a proposal that let's give the Parliamentary Budget Office, together with the FFC, the mandate to recalibrate the budget, allocate additional money for the appointment of doctors, of nurses, of teachers, police officers, and more general workers in municipalities. We made all these concrete, practical, and implementable proposals in the meeting, but there was never a procedural and legal way to put this before a decision of the committee. Instead, Speaker, they were just ignored. Now, this is what is going to happen. If you vote for this fiscal framework and revenue proposal today against the advice, we're going to challenge you in court for failing to follow the law that is clear and basic. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Hadebe.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker.
Order, honorable members. You can allow.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. The Inkatha Freedom Party acknowledges the presentation of the 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals. The IFP notes that the macroeconomic projections underpinning the fiscal framework, particularly the estimated GDP growth rate and inflation forecast, while the government's revenue projections are optimistic, we urge a more cautious approach considering global economic uncertainties and domestic structural challenges such as high unemployment, energy insecurity, and policy inefficiencies. We support efficient government spending but remain concerned about continued wasteful and irregular expenditure. We call for a strengthened oversight mechanism to curb corruption and mismanagement, realignment of expenditure priorities to ensure increased investment in healthcare, education, and job creation initiatives, and greater fiscal support for small and medium enterprises as engines of economic growth and employment. The revenue proposals include adjustments in taxation and the introduction of new levies. We raise the following concerns: that any increase in taxation should be carefully assessed to avoid discouraging investment and burdening households. We welcome the government's expansion of the zero-rated goods list to protect vulnerable.
What impressed me the most is that Yangzhou has a deep culture, especially the Jianzhen culture. And living in this city, come to this city first time, I feel like the combination of history and environment impressed me the most. Yesterday evening, I was treated by the local organizers, and I tried a dish called Wensi Doufu. The techniques of making the tofu and its taste are very good. I highly recommend this dish.
Jobs and improve service delivery, expanded support for agricultural development to enhance food security and rural economies, and greater allocation towards youth employment programs and skills development to equip South Africans for future industries. Furthermore, we stress the importance of a transparent and accountable fiscal process to ensure that the fiscal framework achieves intended outcomes. Honorable Speaker, in consideration of the issues we have raised as the IFP, we support the 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals as well as the committee report. And in conclusion, Honorable Speaker, I wish to caution the DA that if the DA think that their views are a master plan for all of us, they must wake up and think again. We are here to represent our constituency. We are here to represent the people of South Africa. We are not here to take mandate from the Democratic Alliance.
Order,
Honorable Speaker, lastly, if the MK party is if the MK party is really true and honest in that they are representing the people of South Africa, they must ask their leader why he loaned 2.4 billion to Swaziland when he was president of South Africa, instead of taking that money and give it to the people of South Africa. I thank you.
Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Sports, Art and Culture.
Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Honourable Minister, please take your seat. There is a point of order. Could I just get an indication of where the point of order is? Honourable Dartmoor.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My point of order relates to the fact that when the Honourable Member from the IFP started speaking and addressing some comments about the MKP that we could not hear, and we request that he be given an opportunity to repeat what he said about the MKP.
No, we agree.
Honourable Member, your point of order is sustained. We will proceed. Honourable Minister, Honourable Member, yes, please, your point of order.
Chair, Deputy Speaker, can you ask the member who just spoke now, under which rule is he talking about here?
Honourable Member, I did not sustain the point, so we proceed. Honourable Minister, please proceed. Honourable Minister.
Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Could I just have an indication of who has now activated his or her mic?
Yes, it's me on the side.
Yes, Honourable Member there at the back.
Deputy Speaker, I'd like you to rule on this matter. The Speaker, when he started mentioning the issue of the MK, was drowned. As a result, as members of Parliament, we did not hear. Please rule in it and give him the space to re-articulate what he was saying about the MK, because we did not hear. Was being drowned against the rule that guides this House.
Honourable Member, Honourable Member, I also refer you to the rule that once a Speaker has ruled that you do not raise a point of order on that point, and I have not sustained that point of order, so therefore we proceed. Yes, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. We cannot be judged for sound issues that we've been raising for quite a number of times. And the member must understand that MKP are not sound engineers. While MPs hoping that Parliament will be not engineers of keeping the environment not inclusive for us to do our work.
Honourable Member, that is not a point of order.
We are not sound engineers.
They are very far from being engineers anyway.
Honourable Members, do not switch on your microphones if you have not been recognised. I see there's a problem there in front, Honourable Member.
Very far from that.
But please, can we now proceed? I have ruled on the matter, and the Honourable Minister may now proceed.
Speaker, we are fighting here today with our GNU partner, the DA. Now it's important that I must give context and history of the fight. The finance minister approached us and he said, we are looking at a 2% VAT. We immediately said, that's too much.
We were negotiating, we were fighting, we were debating. We ended up on 0.5 percentage points. I can't have it my way or the highway. So on the basis that the African National Congress, a deployee in the finance minister, was willing to move from 2% to 0.5%. It is the reason why today I'm a proud member of the GNU.
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Honourable Manye, on what point do you rise?
Thank you, Speaker. The honourable member is misleading the House. There was never a 2%. It's always been a 2 percentage point. It's very clear. The member must mislead the House.
Order, honourable members. Honourable members, I am now dealing with Honourable Manye's point. Honourable Minister, I have not yet called you to the podium. Honourable Manye, that is a matter of debate. So the Minister may proceed. I see the Honourable Pambu at the back. Yes, Honourable Pambu.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think at some point we must have an interaction with the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture that he never addresses the matters on the table in the Parliament of South Africa. He's constantly speaking about peripheral matters. Today he's not debating the finance budget. He's speaking about something else. And I think it's a disservice to the people of South Africa. All he knows to do is to he knows to do is to praise those who have deployed him. At some point, there must be a reining in on the Minister of Sport and Culture that he doesn't make valuable contributions in Parliament. We have to have that conversation. He doesn't make valuable contributions to debate in this Parliament. He goes there and he speaks about peripheral issues because he's got no value to it. It's unacceptable. It's been continuing for a while now. We can't accept it as members of Parliament. Can we debate the matters on the table and stop telling us about his role in the GNU and his appreciation? We're tired. We know he's thankful. We're tired of that. Please.
Honourable Pambu, that is a matter of your opinion and a matter for debate. The Minister may include in his speech whatever he wants to include. We cannot dictate. So, Honourable Manye, is it on the same point on which I have just ruled? Honourable Manye.
Chair, I'm raising on the point of saying a matter is a debate when it's a factual issue. If you were to look into
but there is no such a point, man.
If you were to look into the budget, Honourable Deputy Speaker, there's no such a thing as a 2%. It's a 2 percentage points. It's fundamentally different. It's not a debate matter. It's a factual.
Honourable Manye, in terms of the rules, I have now ruled, and the Honourable Minister will now proceed. Honourable Minister, my apologies. Your member there at the back also wishes to raise a point. Yes, please go ahead, Honourable Daniels.
Thank you. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Your member is on the floor. Honourable Minister, your member is on the floor. Yes, member, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. We must be sitting in different meetings because the Honourable Minister is raising points on the VAT item. Talking about the 2%, Honourable Chairperson, Speaker, is a matter that was initially tabled.
I have ruled on the matter.
Yeah, but they mustn't say we're not talking about VAT.
Honourable
when in
member,
fact digits are being mentioned, which refers to VAT.
I have ruled on the matter, and please, members, take note. Once I have ruled on a matter, that is the end of that particular point of order, and we don't entertain it any further. Honourable Minister, please proceed.
So, Honourable Speaker, it was on that basis that I wanted to explain why is it that I support what we are discussing here today. Unashamedly. But you see, this parliament, since I joined this parliament, the name of the poor has been used by every Tom, Dick and Jabulani. Everyone, the poor, the poor. The DA wanted to treat the VAT issue with Bella. Where was the poor in that transaction? Yesterday, a lady called Bronwyn Williams, her son was shot dead yesterday in Westbury. That lady is sick. After forensics took her son, they said to her, follow us. She said, no, I must go and vote first, because voting is the only way to silence the guns in my area. So if you wonder why Mackenzie is voting here, because this budget contains hope and plans that there will be more policing, there will be more jobs for the people. Lastly, you see, Honorable Des van Rooyen come here, and he says, we love blue lights. When President Zuma appointed him for a weekend, he didn't say no to the blue lights.
Honourable Minister, there's a point. Honourable Minister, Honourable Minister, please take your seats. Honourable Skosana, your point of order.
Deputy Speaker.
Order, members. Please proceed, Honourable Skosana.
Deputy Speaker, President Zuma is not in the house here. So it's irrelevant. What he's talking about is irrelevant. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, please proceed. Honourable Minister, my apologies. Please take your seat. Member from the EFF, what is your point of order?
Speaker, and this is on relevance. You know, we were having a very sophisticated debate on money bills, on fiscal framework. The minister has totally degenerated the debate on budget. The guy simply has no clue what the money bills is about, what the fiscal framework is about. He's speaking here like he's talking some numbers there in prison, talking about budget and all of this. Can you ask the minister, does he know what the fiscal framework says? Or is he going to continue degenerating the standard of the debate in this parliament about the budget? We can't stand for this mediocrity, we cannot.
Honourable Member, I have already ruled on the same point raised by the Honourable Pambu, and that is my ruling. Honourable Minister, please proceed.
Speaker,
Honourable Minister, you will be interrupted again. Please take your seat. Member from the MK, what is your point of order?
I just wish to check if the 3 minutes is not yet depleted of the minister there. Is wasting our time.
Honourable Member, that is for the presiding officer to indicate that time has been concluded. Thank you. Honourable Member, MK.
Deputy Speaker, I just want to check who can play with the minister. The allegation that there's a child missing, and then is the one that is suspected. I want to check with the minister. Is he aware of that? He is supposed to be arrested for that.
Honourable Member, that is out of order. Minister, please proceed.
You know, Speaker, I'm sitting there being very proud of myself because I am containing myself. I'm being given economic lessons by people that have never given nobody a job, never opened a business, while I've given thousands of people a job. I've opened plenty of businesses. In conclusion, Speaker, I just want to conclude by saying 5 minutes before this hearing, I was the one running around saying to people, we can't lose the DA. We must convince the DA to remain. I'm standing here today to say, Abahambe. Thank you.
Honourable members, order. Honourable Vessels, please proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. We disagree on a lot of matters in this House, in this Parliament.
Honourable members, order.
But I do believe that we all agree that South Africa is in financial trouble. I do believe that we can all agree that we are in economic trouble, that there's not sufficient economic growth, that there's an unemployment crisis, and that the majority of South Africans are poor. I do believe that we disagree on the causes hereof. But whilst we disagree because of different ideologies and different policies, I do believe we can agree that the people out there, the ordinary South Africans, the majority of South Africans are suffering. I do believe, and I am convinced, that we can all agree, and we do all agree, and that there's a broad consensus in this Parliament that a VAT increase is not desirable. I do believe that. And that is why I also believe that accepting this fiscal framework, which still provides for and are based on a VAT increase, won't be acceptable for the Freedom Front Plus. The fact of the matter is that we could have amended this fiscal framework and made it better. For too long, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Parliament has functioned as a rubber stamp when it comes to budget. And that is why it is in the past accepted that what is tabled were just passed and implemented. Times are a-changing. We have to accept that. And that is why we can and do have the power to amend the fiscal framework, to make it better, and to what we are all convinced of, what we all agree with, that we should not overburden the already overtaxed South Africans even more, that we should change the fiscal framework and the budget as such. South Africans are overtaxed and underwhelmed, or underserviced, if you want. Job creation is not taking place. The economy is not growing. Poverty is increasing. And service delivery is lacking. Increasing tax in any form will not, at the end of the day, stimulate economic growth. It will lead to less economic activity. It will increase cost of living. It will lead to less disposable income, less job creation, less investment opportunities, and more poverty, which will lead to less tax revenue. And the projected tax revenue won't realize because of that economic reality. We have to note that a tax revolt is imminent in South Africa. And it's understandable because people are poor and getting poorer. We have to take that into account, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Government expenditure is not cost effective. A lot of money is being wasted. We have to address that. But we should leave the politicking and the political opportunism and rather focus on making this budget better and building a better economy so that we create wealth for all South Africans. I thank you.
The Honourable Trollop.
Honourable Speaker, let me remind us all why we are here this afternoon, and that's because we have a budget impasse and that the GNU has not been able to thread that budget needle having been in government together for 9 months. And the main protagonist in this conflict is the very party that were clapping like seals this time a year ago when the minister tabled his budget. But now they are moaning like a drain. From the outset, Action SA has fiercely opposed any increase in VAT and the personal income tax bracket creep. We remain unwavering in our commitment shielding ordinary South Africans from unjust and unnecessary tax hikes. At the first aborted effort to table a budget, I said that the government must cut the fat and leave the VAT. Action SA chose to recommend changes to the fiscal framework rather than amend it outright because an amendment would have required the Minister of Finance to redo the entire budget process. This would have caused more delays. Let me remind you what the delays are. 19th of February, aborted budget. 21 days later, 12th of March, presentation of a budget. 21 days later, we are here today and we have an impasse. All that while, the value of our rand has gone down the drain. The rand to dollar value has decreased by 1.1%. Rand to pound, 1.2%. Rand to euro, 1.1%. That's making South Africans much poorer than a proposed increase in VAT that we object to. Instead, our approach allows for the necessary time to table alternative revenue proposals and, most importantly, to gazette a postponement of the VAT increase without triggering a full budget revision. Action SA led the charge in the Standing Committee on Finance to protect South Africans from increases in VAT. We made this recommendation to prevent a VAT increase, to prevent inflation or to ensure inflation adjustments for personal income tax and prevent income tax stealth bracket creep. Instead, the committee now will have 30 days to develop alternative proposals to raise 19 billion rand in personal income tax and 13 billion rand to make up the shortfall that is required to balance this budget. This approach ensures that the government explores reasonable and responsible revenue solutions without burdening the ordinary South Africans with unfair tax hikes. Action SA's constructive, responsible alternative keeps the fiscal framework intact while preventing more fiscal instability and procedural deadlock. SARS has proven today that they are the master revenue collectors. They collected 1.855 billion rand of revenue in the last financial year. 8.8 billion rand more than they projected, 114 billion rand more than the year before. There is the solution. The solution lies with SARS doing its job and this House empowering SARS to do its job, not by taxing poor South Africans, not by exposing South Africans to bracket creep. We now have a month to fix that, and I hope that this House will put South Africans first and put their parochial priorities in their pockets. Thank you.
The Honourable Swart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the ACDP appreciates that this is a very complicated and complex matter. However, let us make it very clear that we have some serious concerns with the report, and we are concerned from a legal perspective as to the process that was followed. Surely, a senior counsel opinion should have been obtained, given the fact that in all likelihood this matter will end up in the courts. If one also considers that the fiscal framework is premised on economic growth of 1.9%, last year's growth was a dismal 0.6%, 0.5% lower than Treasury's own projection. How realistic then is a 1.9% projection? Even the committee agrees that Treasury's growth projection is too optimistic, yet we accept this fiscal framework. It must improve the accuracy of its forecasts. And even on this dubious forecast, gross loan debt is set to reach a staggering 6 trillion rand, or 76.2% of GDP. Debt service costs 4.9 billion rand, or 22 cents of every rand of revenue. This is clearly unsustainable. So the ACDP is very clear, as most parties are here, that we do not accept the VAT increase. Yesterday, whilst the committee was sitting, SARS announced that they had collected an extra 8.8 billion rand. Surely, the additional balance, which is about 4 billion rand, could have been collected and will be collected without raising the VAT. We also do not support the fact that personal tax brackets were not increased for the so-called bracket creep. And we seriously question from a legal perspective whether these two aspects have in fact been scrapped as has been alleged. We firmly believe that South Africans are cash-strapped, and already according to the Laffer curve, shows that additional taxes will have diminishing returns. The ACDP believes that a pro-growth budget which cuts unnecessary spending and wastage is what is required. Underperforming and unnecessary programs must be discontinued. Lastly, we believe that closing the tax gap, which is estimated by SARS at 800 billion rand, by only 10%, would result in additional 80 billion rand for state coffers. We as the ACDP cannot support the report. We believe that those VAT changes and those other changes could have been implemented using the legislation that the committee has to its disposal. I thank you.
The Honourable Kwankwa.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. It's easy to say, asifuni VAT increase, asifuni corporate income tax increase, but then what do we want? What are the alternatives? When you're dealing with finance, it's about balancing the books. So it's great that there's an opportunity for further engagement on the revenue proposals that were made by the Minister. However, that process here, it is great. I don't take mandate from anyone except the UDM. It's great because it provides us an opportunity once again to reflect on the various scenarios and the options that might be tabled at that particular forum. Why? Simply because there are trade-offs in economics. There's also the transmission mechanism. So if you take one from here, it has an impact on the other sector of the economy. And it's easy to say no tax increase, but where are we going to get the alternative sources of revenue from? Because they are not on their own going to entail tax, whether it's indirect or direct. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's simple.
Cập nhật cho các bạn các cái chương trình hoàn tín đang rất là hấp dẫn ở trong cái quý 1 năm 2025. Đầu tiên là cái mã giảm giá 2,4 triệu thì cái mã này nó khá phổ thông rồi đúng không ạ? Và áp dụng cho những cái khách hàng mới. Thứ hai nữa đó chính là một cái chương trình hoàn tín rất là hấp dẫn và áp dụng cho cả chạy quảng cáo ở trên shop nữa. Đó chính là các bạn chạy quảng cáo sẽ được nhận một cái tín dụng lên tới 100 đô. Thứ ba nữa đó chính là chương trình chạy quảng cáo tin nhắn ha. Thì khi mà các bạn chạy quảng cáo tin nhắn với tài khoản quảng cáo mới ấy, và các bạn sẽ có cơ hội được nhận một cái mã tín dụng lên tới 12,4 triệu nhé. Và nếu như các bạn quan tâm thì có thể comment bên dưới hoặc là inbox cho mình sẽ gửi cho các bạn các cái chương trình ưu đãi mới nhất từ Hoàn Tín TikTok nha. Chào các bạn.
It's great to talk about the debt to GDP ratio. It's great to talk about growth forecasts which are unrealistic or unreasonable. That's true. But at some point we have to grow the economy so that we can reduce the debt to GDP ratio as a ratio of the economy. Now it means we need to try and manage all the economic fundamentals and the economic indicators simultaneously. They are not mutually exclusive. They have to be done concurrently because management of the economy is like that. But I think we should learn a lesson from what is happening right now. That consultation should have started way back when the budget cycle started last year, so that we're able to reach the compromises which we are likely to reach if we deal with this matter in a very matured way going forward. But as the UDM, we need money to bring our soldiers back from the DRC. We need money to be able to pay the SRD grant. We need the money to be able to pay social welfare budget. All of those are required. When I go to my constituency, I am not asked about Bella and whatnot. I'm asked about social grants, and we support this thing. In the process, we sort ourselves out after that. Thank you.
The Honourable Zibi.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we are here today because the can has been kicked down the road too many times in the past, especially since February 19. We are here because trillions of rand borrowed by our government since 2013 have gone to waste. If we borrow more, it will be irresponsible. Today, we face a situation where the country pays interest of 8.5 billion rand per week on our debt at between 9% and 10%. Taking on any more debt will be a burden on future generations. We must make our choices within the money that is available. But the biggest problem we have is the composition of our expenditure. We spend too much on salaries, too much paying for debt, and too little on investment into the economy. The Department of Health only spends 5% of its budget on capital expenditure. The Department of Education only 4%. That means we are asking fellow South Africans to wait longer for services they deserve. South Africans have been bled dry. They cannot afford any more taxes. They are angry because on a daily basis they see people who steal and waste government money walking around without being arrested. Just last week we were in Buffalo City on oversight. 57 million rand has been spent on a swimming pool so far, but it is still not working. Instead, it must be dug up and built again at a cost to taxpayers. In the OR Tambo district where I come from, we see the same patterns. South Africans still waiting for clean running water, even though there are taps installed. We saw a dam project on which hundreds of millions have been spent, but there is still no dam and no water. We found the same pattern of mismanagement, with suppliers being paid for work that till today has not produced the desired result. The painful thing is that the people of South Africa have no choice but to put more money into the projects because we cannot tolerate that there are South Africans who have no access to clean water. It is a painful insult to us South Africans to pay twice, 3 or 4 times what they should have paid less for. Honourable Deputy President, surely, we can work together to find between 20 billion and 30 billion minimum in savings in the medium term, surely. But that means we must work together between now and October to start producing results from next year. South Africans cannot afford to bleed any more money. They don't have it. If we take the experience seriously, then we must use the next 30 days to find alternatives to VAT and personal income tax increases. We will certainly make detailed submissions in the respect so that we can finalize this budget. Therefore, we will vote for the adoption of this report.
The Honourable Maimane.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it's common cause. Today we're not being asked to make an easy decision. We're being asked to make a responsible and a decision that serves the people of this country, not court processes, not political processes, but the people's processes. And therefore, fellow South Africans, it's not a choice between good or bad. It's a choice between worse or much worse. Delaying today will have the economic impact that we are beginning to see. Therefore, as BOSA, I come here today to say we are here to ensure the passing of this fiscal framework so that we can deal with the issues that sit within this budget. I've said it and I will say it again. This is not a good budget. Otherwise, all of us would accept it easily. But Parliament has the duty to amend it. That is a punishment on people for state capture. Therefore, let's use the next while to find alternative revenue mechanisms. And part of those revenue mechanisms, honourable members, pertain to saying, can we declare gambling as a sin tax so that we can raise the appropriate revenue through that whole process? Our budget suffers because it tells the people we have 1.8% growth. We need more growth, not less. And it's a fictitious number. So I'm here to make some proposals. Minister of Finance, as you know, I've engaged you on this issue. I I think we can support transformation, but let's ensure that the 20 billion rands allocated to the NEF can be staggered over the medium term, because if we do that, we can find the reduction in expenditure to ameliorate the VAT needs that we are putting on the table. Secondly, I think we need to strike a deal with one of our trading partners, which is the USA, so that we can increase the growth capital formation in this country. Thirdly, let us fund not only SARS, but let's fund the NPA and SIU so that those who stole the money can end up in jail and we can solve the revenue question. Lastly, let us fix municipalities. That's why, as the Appropriations Committee, our supporters, BOSA, says we will be going to the Appropriations Committee to deal with the expenditure issues and to amend the budget that has been put before us. I say, honorable members, it's not a blank check. If we don't do these amendments in the next 30 days, we cannot support the appropriations bill. We cannot support the division of revenue. Our job is to find growth mechanisms so that we deal with this budget. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Marabu.
Agriculture. Even he's spending because he's going to get machine.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The African Transformation Movement rejects 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the ATM unequivocally stands against any tax increases. Raising taxes in the current economic climate will place an additional burden on already struggling households and businesses. South Africans are grappling with high unemployment, rising living costs, and economic stagnation. Increasing taxes will only stifle economic growth, discourage investment, and further push vulnerable communities into financial distress. Instead of extracting more from taxpayers, the government must focus on an efficient revenue collections, cutting wasteful expenditure, and eliminating corruption to maximize existing resources. Focusing on the business of the day. A budget that prioritizes the needs of the many over the privileges of the few must be our guiding principles. The continued allocation of over 30 billion in medical aid tax credits disproportionately benefits the middle class, while our public health care systems remains underfunded. It does not make sense to subsidize private health care while provinces are forced to implement hiring freezes, compromising service delivery in our hospitals and clinics. This is an injustice that we cannot ignore. These funds should be redirected to strengthening our public healthcare infrastructure, ensuring that all South Africans, regardless of income, have access to quality healthcare. Honourable members, we are deeply concerned about the increasing push for public-private partnership at the local government level, often without transparency on their financial implications. Initiatives like Operation Vulindlela are being promoted with little evidence, modeling, or clear results on their long-term impacts. PPPs often obscure debt obligations and expose critical services such as water and electricity to cost escalation that makes our people more vulnerable, and they are unaffordable for our people. If we are to pursue such partnerships, there must be full disclosure and public scrutiny to prevent unintended consequences that disproportionately affect the poor. Honourable Deputy Speaker, we stand at a crossroads. South Africa's fiscal framework must be one that serves its people equitably. We cannot continue with policies that entrench inequality while millions struggle to access basic services. The ATM calls for a budget that prioritizes
your time has expired.
Expenditure. We do not adopt the report. Thank you.
The Honourable Makubela.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, the Fiscal Framework and Revenue Proposal report tabled before us considers a budget that continues to advance the transformation of the country through a redistributive measure. The fiscal framework of the 2025 priorities prioritizes the expansion of government spending with a net increase of non-interest expenditure of 142 billion. This increases our social wage and cushions the poor through a safety net and strengthens the provision of critical social services. The budget further prioritizes key capital investments to strengthen network industries and expand infrastructure development to contribute to economic growth and job creation. The ANC has always advanced a progressive taxation system which taxes the rich and the middle strata to support the poor and the marginalized. In the local sphere of government, most of the rates and taxes are collected from urban areas to support our rural areas and townships. This is a character of a progressive tax system. True to its commitment to the people of South Africa, the ANC has shaped our fiscal policy to prioritize the social wage, which currently stands at 61% of the budget. The social wage is about the poor and the marginalized. In the main, it expands access to education, health, shelter for the poor, and it provides a safety net through a comprehensive social security system, which is one of the largest grant systems in Africa and in the continent. On revenue proposals, the ANC welcomes the internal processes of the National Executive, which resulted to a decline in the VAT from the first 2% proposed to the 0.5%. The ANC has resolved, as part of the public involvement, to have National Treasury to look into an alternative revenue source to cover the shortfall, which is proposed to cover the VAT increase and the inflationary adjustment to personal tax brackets. We can assure South Africans that this fiscal framework is subject to a strict recommendation coming from the Standing Committee on Finance, which recommends that National Treasury facilitates to seek alternative revenue and expenditure savings to balance the 28 billion shortfall. We believe that multiple social interventions will cushion the poor, such as the zero-rated food basket, social grant increases, and the increases in the indigent program, and the decision not to increase the fuel levy and the intervention to improve affordability of public transport will provide a relief for the public. Honorable members, seated here in this assembly, we are fully aware and cognizant of the fact that our challenges as a country are a problem of the stagnant economy that cannot create enough jobs for the youth and the unemployed. The budget that is tabled before us makes bold measures to cushion the poor and the workers. That will be done through the increased social grants above inflation, including funding of the social relief distress grant, support unemployment, which will cover about 28 million South Africans. Allocations for the 3-year public service wage agreement, which is above inflation, will mitigate against the cost of living for the poor, stimulating increased household consumption. About 19 billion is added to cover the medium term to keep approximately 11,000 teachers in their classrooms. 28 billion is added to the health budget to keep about 9,300 healthcare workers in our hospitals, in our clinics, which will contribute to addressing the matter of unemployed doctors, nurses, and employ about 800 post-community service doctors. This fiscal framework includes funding the missing middle to enable their continued access to higher education. Honourable members, to stimulate economic growth, the fiscal framework takes bold measures through increased public infrastructure spending for over 3 years, which will amount to about $1 trillion, focusing on SANRAL, Transnet, ESCOM transmission, and the provision of water. New regulations for the public-private partnerships will take effect from 1 June 2025 to increase infrastructure investment and enhance crowding of the private financing for public infrastructure. SARS is allocated 3.5 billion in the current financial year and an additional 4 billion over the medium term to enhance revenue collection. This will strengthen SARS' efforts to collect a significant portion of the projected 8 billion that is collected and to tackle illicit financial flows. Honourable members, about 2.1 billion of over the medium term is allocated to support about 120,000 SMMEs, which will benefit businesses owned by the youth, persons with disabilities, and other small business owners. To achieve debt sustainability, we need to resolve the economic growth problem.